Hello, and welcome to Blue Cup Chronicles, where we talk about everyday life situation and simple common sense. I'm your host, Shonda,
I'm Tan.
And I'm Jan.
and we are about to blow your mind. Ladies, what is in your cup tonight?
Well, I have some pina colada flavored water. It's good.
Some water. You was drinking last week and you gonna drink now you want some water?
Yeah, because I don't want to be drinking today right now.
Okay.
So,
Jen, what you drinking now? And welcome back. How was your anniversary?
It was great.
woo-woo.
It was great. Thank you
Good,
for asking.
good.
It was actually great. But it's been a long day at work, so I had me a little Stella Black tonight.
All right. Well, y'all, I got my tea. I don't know why I'm hating on her about her water. I got just some salted
Right.
tea. You know, but
Always.
but tonight we're gonna be skipping gossip with Jen again so that we can discuss an important topic. And that topic is Black Lives Matter and what it matters to you. We do have some special guests joining us again. We have Tim here. He's a father of one. He has a bachelor in business administration. He also ran for the Colorado House of Representatives a few years back. He currently do business intelligence software for HPE. Everybody, let's welcome Tim to the show.
Welcome to
Hello, thank you.
Yes. Y'all should all remember Danielle Renfro comment from the last episode. She is a wife and mother of two. She's a certified holistic wellness coach. She's an active volunteer in her community. She's a Bible teacher and owner of Danny Nicole Events. Let's welcome Danielle back to the show.
Yay.
Yes. And then we have Mr. Frank Sinclair back. Frank is the Chief Encouragement for Dream Again LLC. He is the founding member of Front Range Power Connectors, Pike Peak Pros, and Black Business Network. He serves on the board of director for CASA, Another Life Foundation, and Power Connectors. He is the recent president of VetNet and the founders of the Coaches Collaborative. He served in the Air Force, father of four, whom all are business executive in the Denver area. He was named Random Act of Kindness Award winner in 2019 and Most Influential Networker in 2020. He is certified in diversity leadership development and in personal communication. And he's also an ordained minister. Let's welcome Frank back to the show.
Woo!
Yes. Then we have Cass. She is a mother, wife, and a Girl Scout leader. Whoop, whoop. She have a bachelor in communication, a near minor in anthropology. She spent a decade in early childhood teaching English, speech, and social studies. Everybody, let's welcome Cass to the show.
Hello,
Yes.
hello.
So I do want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to get right to it. Black Lives Matter is especially important topic right now. It went from a hashtag in July of 2013 to an active movement. The movement became more widely known after two high-profile deaths in 2014 of unarmed African-American men, Eric Gardner and Michael Brown, were murdered, and neither of the officer involved in their death was indicted. Then we had to deal with the deaths of Rayshard Brooks, Daniel Prude, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tatiana Jefferson, Stephon Clark, Tamir Rice, and Freddie Gray, and many, many more lost their lives to the hands of the police. So I want to start out, let's see here, with Ms. Cass. Ms. Cass, what is your definition of racism and racial bias?
Damn, you're jumping me right into it. Okay.
Yep.
Well, the social studies teacher in me, which is where I'm going from, is going to say, race is a construct, but it's a very real reality for everyone, and some people more than others. So what I tell my kids, I'm just going to give you my elevator speech for my kids, is that race is, the difference in cultures and peoples, but there's the human race, but not everybody, until everybody's got it on the same footing, it ain't working for everybody. And we got to really be aware of that. So That doesn't even answer your question. So there's the power structures behind it, and that's what I try to tell my kids. It doesn't matter if we're broke. We're not broke because we're white. So that's when we talk about it, that's how we talk about it. We're not having hard times because of the color of our skin. And that's important to remember.
Frank,
So
same question to you. What's your definition of racism and racial bias?
My definition of racism, as long as I've lived, I've never constructed a definition. I know the going definition that goes out and people sort of embrace. But I think of it as an imaginary barrier between human beings because of melanin. So since there's different shades of melanin in people's skins, that has created a barrier in people's lives and caused people, where humans naturally go, to find another reason to construct walls and bias against other humans. So that's my definition of racism. Bias is simply the natural outcome of sin. And y'all will like this one because we, since the beginning of time, have always tried to elevate one person above another, and we'll always find a reason to do that. So we just inserted racism into this form of bias, and it's the one that really gets the most coverage and the most news. Not saying it doesn't deserve it. I'm just saying it's at the front of people's consciousness, and it's put some really other biases at lower levels that I think that need to be brought to the fore as well. I'll throw that in for free.
I want to go to Tim. Tim, what is your definition of All Lives Matter slogan, and is there anything wrong with using it?
I think I've heard a lot of good explanations for that. I think a long time ago, I kind of got hung up on the terminology, and I think it's just a miscommunication around that. Because to me, it's like, well, all forests matter, but our forests are on fire right now. And I think when I heard it put that way about Black Lives Matter, for the longest time I was like, well, I mean, all lives do matter, and it's like, well, I'm not saying Black lives don't matter. And then I thought of it like, well, Black lives matter too. And I think that's the thing, is because it seems like society forgets that sometimes. And I think that's the important part of maybe evangelizing that concept and kind of bridging that divide. There's so many political issues where people just are yelling past each other. And the problem isn't that they necessarily disagree at the basic principles, but that they're just yelling past each other. So to me, I think, I don't know, I don't say that. I don't say all lives matter just because it should be obvious, but we're bringing attention to the fact that Black lives matter, and that needs attention brought to it because it's still a problem. And what we learned in school, that everything got fixed in 1965, is well, there's still more work to be done, obviously.
Right. Danielle, can people of color be racist?
Absolutely, 100%. Let me tell you, I was born in Michigan, and we lived in Michigan until I was like 10 or 11. And then we moved down to Florida. When I lived in Michigan, I had never been called a nigger. I'm gonna say nigger, I'm not gonna say the N-word. Never been called it. Nobody ever even referenced my skin tone, like, oh, you light skin, you red bone. Then we moved to the South, moved to Florida. And the first person who even called me out anything racist was a Black girl who said, you talk white. And I said, how can I talk a color? And she slapped me in the face. So the first time I experienced racism was from a Black person who judged the way that I talked, because I talked different. And she was just a kid, so she learned that from her parents. I've experienced racism from white people, but later in life. And it was just subtle ways that, of course, I would have never detected as a young person. But outright racism, I usually have received from Black people. So if we can be racist or prejudiced against each other, we certainly can be racist against other races.
I agree. Frank, you want to add to that? Like you had something to add to that? No? No, okay.
No, I didn't want to add because I think that's one of the best explanations of that question that I've ever heard, Danielle. So thank you for inserting that. And you asked my daughter, she'll be very specific that a Black person can't be racist. And I think the verbiage around that is academic nonsense, to be perfectly honest.
Because I think what they say, and I said I wasn't going to be talking, but I think what they, I did say I wasn't going to be talking today, but I hear them say that we can't be racist, we can be prejudiced, not racist. There's two different things. I'm gonna leave that one alone. I'm leaving it alone.
That's only if you redefine the word racist, my friend. Because if you go to a dictionary definition of racist, there's no way in the world that you can make that argument. So I don't know where we're going to. How are we going to define these things? Are we going to let the people with the most anger?
Don't let the media
That's probably another question.
Let the media do it. Let the dictionary, but do not let the media define these terms, because that's a very big problem.
Yeah. Frank, do you feel like the name Black Lives Matter needs to be changed?
Who's you asking?
You, Frank. I be honest with you, and this is from my heart, John. I really don't care what the organization calls itself. I simply care about actions, because you can frame Black Lives Matter in a positive way. It doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be destructive. As a matter of fact, Black Lives Matter could be a healing term for America and for people that are trying to understand the angst and the anger that's going on here. So I wouldn't change their names, no. You want to change it? Cass, same question for you.
It's a little late for rebranding at this point. So from a branding perspective, if I could go back in time, I would encourage the development, and you can't, because nobody was sitting around going, I wonder what white people are going to think of this. Okay, I totally understand that. Okay, and they could have come up with anything. It could have been, hey, please stop killing us, we'll make you pie. And some white person would have been like, well, what kind of pie? It would have been, they would have taken offense no matter what. But that said, it's loaded because so I'm fighting with people over the all lives versus it means everybody. So we're wasting, I feel like I'm wasting time trying to explain that to people. And to be honest, when Black Lives Matter started, they just called it, Black Lives Matter, and I was fine with that. And then they switched to BLM. And I swear to God, the first day I heard them talking about some newscast saying, well, the BLM flag, and I stopped and I said, the Bureau of Land Management has a flag? And that's because I'm white and I'm in the West, and that's what the BLM is. So for the record, the BLM does have a flag, but that's not what they meant. So branding wise, and a lot of white people don't like the BLM Bureau part. So it was a bad connotation. But like I said, that ship has sailed. So I don't think we can rename it. All I can do is, from my side, try to keep massaging people over to get what's really going on with it.
Jen, I want to ask you, Jen, do you feel like a Black person have to walk on eggshells to be good, to not break the rules, to not have to worry about police shooting efforts? Like,
wow. In some cases, I would say yes, they would, because you got to look at you got the good cop, you got the bad cop format. And for us, well, no, I would say in all cases we do, because you never know what cop is going to approach you.
Right.
What kind of day they have had. It's that right there is a whole scenario. I don't think only Black should walk on eggshells. I mean, with the cop, anybody should, because it always, from it's that cop can be had a bad day, and it does not matter what color your skin is sometimes.
That's true. That's true. I want to jump to Tim. Tim, there is a link between, well, is there a link between gun violence in the Black community and excessive use of force by the police?
I'm not sure about statistically, but I think that's probably likely. Just if you create a culture of violence, it seems to me like that would be, it would lend itself to that. I know there's a definite correlation between excessive force or increased force and poverty, as well as violent crime and poverty, drug abuse and poverty, broken homes and poverty, domestic violence and poverty. And, given the history of this country and that there are systemic inequalities, which are racially based, so that sounds pretty racist. I think that's probably likely, yeah.
You want to add to that, Frank? Same question for you. Do you feel like there's a link between gun violence in the Black community and the excessive use of force by the police?
Gun violence and excessive force by the police. Can I frame it this way? Because someone asked me that why is the police department militarized? And I say, because the community is militarized. That's why the police has to be militarized. I watch shows like 48 Hours and other things, and I challenge Tim with, because then it becomes this is how I feel about it based on things. I think that this can be measured. And I think there can be some measurable outcomes, rather that is true, Shonda. So I'm not so quick to answer questions like that. And my question to that question is, why aren't these things being measured? When there's obvious numbers around these things, so why don't we have objective data that talks to this, and rather than having to make up things based on scenarios that are around us. So that's my question to the question.
Got you. I got you. Cass, do you think there's an effective way to stop police brutality?
Yeah, I do. I think that it seems that a lot of law enforcement people I know come at it from a military training perspective. And I think from what they've told me, that's changed since the first Gulf War. That prior to the first Gulf War, there was individual training. It had to do with de-escalation, Not that it was obviously effective in all or even most areas. But after the Gulf War, there was a lot of training that came in that was from military contractors, former military contractors coming in saying, hey, you're a domestic police force. We got the training. We just trained a whole bunch of soldiers. That's not the same freaking thing. Not domestically is not the same as going to war, but that's what it's become. And so I think as a teacher, retraining is so essential if it's ever going to get fixed. There's of course, all the problems of how people were raised and so forth, but the only thing that can help with that right now, I think, is retraining people and cops to look at all aspects, whether it's skin color or if the person has a disability. They don't have a great record, and you can't, I don't buy the fact that the disability people with disabilities are the second highest problem with bad encounters with the police. What are you going to tell me about that? It's like, okay, they were deaf, they were autism spectrum, they were mentally ill, and they still got shot. That that's still a freaking problem, and that's on the police side still. So
could I do a follow-up question with Cass, Shonda?
Yeah,
because there's some real assumptions made here, and I think what you just implied is that the police are responsible for the uptick in violence between civilians and police?
I think they could be better at de-escalating. Okay, so I don't think that's a fair call out on that. Are they responsible for it? No. There's so many aspects that should be happening in the community. Like my mom was a psychologist, and she told me stories in the 70s how they used to swap their mentally ill patients. She lived in Dallas, and they would put their mentally ill patients on a bus to Houston, and Houston would send theirs to Dallas because they had been told that they have to release these people, but there was no community, no place in the community for them to go. So they would go round each other's patients up to get them back into a hospital setting. There's something really wrong with that on so many levels. But basically that lack of community support in that situation, but how about all the people who didn't get rounded back up and got to go back to the hospital and have a warm place and get back on their meds? They were back on the street, and it was probably the police that were cleaning up the mess on that. So no, I don't think the police are necessarily responsible for that, but the lack of de-escalation training and working with different populations of people, it seems to be causing problems. And I don't know how else to say that without making it sound really understated.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of the problem too is it actually comes back to the legislature, just because if you look at how much stuff is illegal, it's like, I like to tell people, I tend to consider myself a friend of the police, but also of BLM, which is a weird place to be. But something that you think about is Eric Garner is dead because it's illegal to sell cigarettes without like 3 different business licenses. And you get the police involved in all these scenarios. You get the police involved also as, ersatz social services, essentially, right? And they're not trained for that. You're right, Cass. And there's a lot of situations where they shouldn't be involved. And, it's just that you got to look back at the laws and you ask a lot of cops, including friends of mine, they'll say, well, if it's not on the books, I don't write it. And some of them are more or less judicious with handing tickets out and things like, or more. But you have to look at what they have in their tool belt.
Tan, you want to add to that? Like you had something to say. I was watching you.
Okay, so there is a huge disparity. Police should be treated as civilians when they commit a crime. I'm just saying. But they're not. It is their actions, it's what they're doing, eliminating our race, trying to at least. It is what they're doing, their actions. Just because someone was selling cigarettes, look at him. That does not mean, that's not a death sentence. That's not. No. Just because George Floyd may have had a phony 20, which turns out it was real, did not mean that he needed to die. So if there is if they can be taught a lesson like us regular people are taught a lesson, then that can help show every other police officer that wants to or thinking about it in the back of their head to like just know, because you have to suffer the consequences. Just because you wore that badge, you did a crime, you should do the time.
You want to add to that, Frank?
Somehow I knew you were going to come back to me.
When I do that, let me tell you, when one person is talking, I'm literally looking at everybody's face expression. I know who to hit back on. And I've seen everybody's face expression change except Danielle's. I ain't gonna lie. I watch everybody's face up here. When somebody says something, I'm seeing eyes rolling. I'm seeing heads go down. I'm gonna call on you.
Well, I was not disrespectfully rolling my eyes from Tan's comments. I totally, absolutely, thoroughly agree that a person that does the crime needs to do the time.
Absolutely.
But we respectfully pull parts of narratives out of stories, narratives that fit our conclusions. We really do. And all of us humans do. And you guys know that it's true. We really do. We pull the parts out that fit our narratives. And then we build our case around the parts we pull out. And I'm not going to say I'm an expert on minutia of these crimes. It really broke my heart. I couldn't even watch the George Floyd video because of what I experienced myself as a 64-year-old guy being raised in the South. We actually saw a black person lynched, hung, and etc. So if anyone should be angry, it should be me, right? But I'm not, because I can't live in that space because it takes too much of my energy to be angry. It takes too much to live as an angry human. So I can only do as my not real mentor, but from reading my mentor Martin Luther King did, and his policies and the way that he did life is the way I want to do life. It means I'm out to forgive people. I have to forgive my wife. If you're married, raise your hand. Right? And I know it's not apples to apples, but that's just life. It really is. So give me some real meat around these cops being let go or not being prosecuted, because if due justice, if due process is taken out of our system and we continue to let the media try these cases, you're going to be in a much deeper hole interpersonally than we ever thought we could possibly be. That's this recipe for chaos and implosion in our culture. So give me some meat around that. I'm not saying these guys are innocent. I'm not saying anyone, but I want due process if I'm caught doing something. And due process is not what the public gets, so they're left to pull bits and pieces out of every narrative. And normally the pieces they pull out is the one that fits their own conclusions that they've already made.
Want to add to that, Danielle?
Yeah, I do want to add to that. Not only do I feel as though people pull out bits and pieces, I feel as though the media puts out the bits and pieces that they want people to receive, and they're putting batteries in people's back. And I want to say that, hang on one second.
I love having kids.
Toddlers. I want to say that I never watched the George Floyd video because I know myself, as Frank does, I'm emotional. I am a Black woman. What is that going to do to me to actually watch that footage? Like, to watch that footage, whoever wanted to put it out there over and over again, they would easily put that battery in my back. And I refuse to be manipulated by the media. Yes, there are bad officers. That broke my heart. Just reading about it, I cried. So I already knew watching it was going to be too much for me. No, that man did not deserve to die. Now, does that mean that every single police officer is corrupt and that every single Black person who gets pulled over is going to be killed? After I even read about that, I saw an officer drive past me and my heart started palpitating. Who benefits from all of this? Someone benefits from all of this. And like Tan said, oh, well, they should face the same consequences we face. If they don't, why is that? How do they have the confidence of knowing they're not going to face those consequences? It has to be above them then. They are not to blame then. They have entered a career in which they know that they can get away with stuff like this. Then who's to blame? You have to keep going up and up and up higher. And unfortunately, many of us are just puppets. We're just pawns in a game. And I refuse to let them put a battery in my back. It just frustrates me. I've stopped watching the news because I'm sick of it. I'm sick of how biased it is, and I'm just sick of it. So yeah, that's my little.
I got you. I like that one. Yes. I want to go back to you, Tim. Now, although all race kill each other, okay, why do you feel like they always have to do the Black on Black crime? Always being mentioned, there's no Asian on Asian, there's no white on white, there's no Hispanic on Hispanic. Why is there Black on Black? And oh, one more question. Why do that tend to always be the subject after it's brought about? Like, how can I put it? When they, well, it's like, why do they always want to bring about Black Lives Matter? They don't care about what, they killing their own community. They don't care about, them killing each other. So why is that always being brought about when a subject like this, when something like this happens? It's always, well, we killing each other, but so are, white people and Hispanics and Asians, and crimes every damn. But
people like to trot that out a lot, it's like, well, this black police officer got killed in Chicago, and doesn't his life matter? And you're right, you never hear about white on white crimes. Like, around here, if you hear about a murder, it's probably white on white crime, but they don't say that. And that's something where people are like, well, I'm not racist. And it's like, well, you just said black on black crime, and you don't say that about any other context of violent crime or homicides or assaults and stuff. And I think that's one of those things where, you ask what the definition of racism or racial bias is, and that's one that we don't even think about. That's how insidious it is you don't even think about it as a white person unless you read into it. I read a paper from, there's two criminologists, I think from Northeastern University, that wrote a paper on that topic, on referencing the race of an offender and a victim in a crime beyond like FBI statistics. And it's very, very provocative in the media. It's very much putting that battery in people's back. It's very much distracting from the actual issues, which is racism at a systemic institutional level, and just the problems that contribute to the actual factors that contribute to that type of crime, and the nature of it, and why things are the way they are.
Jen, you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. And Tim, I want to come back to you again. Why do you think the United States is still grappling with issues of racial discrimination today? And what can be done to reduce racial prejudice and discrimination in America?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that, honestly. I think, the fact that people are unwilling to give up like the Confederate flag, right? I mean, that's a whole thing. If you've been in Wellington, that's the big right now. And like, I've got my great grandfather died, fighting under the Union Army during the Battle of Vicksburg, and to me, it's like, that's an enemy flag, and it represents racism, at an institutional level. And it's just these people have their prejudices, and they have their traditions, for good or bad, and it's just those things that refuse to die out of history, that just won't let go. I don't know, it's irrational to me, and I'm kind of a hyper rational person, and I think there's just a wavelength I just don't get it.
I want to ask you the same question, Frank.
I feel like I'm being picked on. Jen, don't you think I'm being picked on?
No.
You got good stuff to say, man.
Your intelligent conversations. That's why I come to you quite a bit. Yeah. I love you.
I even go back to the first question that if I may, you said, why does it feel like blacks are being targeted with black on black crime, and et cetera? Once again, Tim says he's highly rational, and I'm not as rational as you know, Tim. But there's statistics that show a few things are happening there now, and one of the reasons is because it's such a higher rate proportionately than other people are having race on race crimes. I mean, incredible rate of that. That's what things that happen are things that get targeted, and sometimes unfairly get rationalized as normal. Right? So people talk about normal stuff. That's it. Why aren't other races there? And I don't have data here. But one thing that I find to be true is that blacks, and I am one, and I am this, are highly emotional. Messages are given to Black people from an emotional level to stir an emotion. It really is. Other races aren't so much. Secondly, Black people don't have the diversity of thought that other people do. So there's more of us that are going to agree with these emotional messages that go out. If you try to send them out to Caucasians or Asians, because they allow for a lot of diversity of thought within their race, they'll argue with one another about that. We tend to latch on to every emotional message that's sent to us and count it as true. Not a lot of research goes in the back end to see if I'm being manipulated or if I'm just being used for someone's agenda. And these are typically political agendas. Whenever you see politics attached to any issue, it is dirty. Yeah, I'm sorry that you were running for office, my friend, but that's just the truth. When it gets attached, agenda gets attached immediately to those, and the most people that can be impacted by the messages that inform on my agenda, the better.
And I lost
And
dude.
Blacks
so
are
I mean, I
notorious.
get it.
Yeah. Well, it's just true, man. People don't want to see it. Secondly, thirdly, and this is my last point, we have to get to a place that we don't have to feel like that we have to rely on other people for our messages. And Black people rely on everyone else to get their messages out. You know, if a white person goes on and says something against BLM, they're immediately target. Look at this DA in, I think, Tennessee, where that young lady was killed. A Black guy in Tennessee, that's the district attorney. He got steamrolled because that officer got acquitted. And Black people came on and just jammed him up. Why? Because it was emotional. They had already concluded their decision before there was even a trial done. So now they're mad at him. Black heroes aren't elevated in our community either. They're only elevated by their positions. If they follow a party line, then they're elevated. If they don't, then they're castigated, whatever. They are not looked at as heroes in our community. Very accomplished Black people. So those are 4 reasons that Black on Black crime, other things gets identified because it is part of the agenda that politicians want to use for re-election purposes and to elevate themselves.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Danielle, no justice, no peace. What do that mean to you?
It means what it says. Okay, so as long as you have injustice, then you're not gonna have peace. But we're never gonna have, like, the thing about that is there's always gonna be somebody, like Frank talked about an agenda. There's always gonna be somebody who stands to gain something from division, lack of unity, lack of peace, and confusion. And who is that? And those people are usually people at the top, but there's also a spiritual battle, whatever you want to say. If you don't believe in God and all of that, there's always, and as long as those people are in power, which they will be, there's never going to be. Now you can cut back on, we'll see like different violent crimes, the statistics, they'll decrease or whatever, but listen, the justice system is very broken, and anybody who has faith in it is a fool. If you ever looking for justice in this justice system, if you're broke, you ain't getting justice. If sometimes the color of your skin, this is the world we live in. It was here before I was born, and this is what it's gonna be. So that's what, no justice, no peace, facts. But it's gonna be that until somebody who is superior to humans comes and can restore order. It just is what it is.
Cass, some people feel like this movement is just a way for African Americans to break the law by looting, burning down buildings. what you guys say about that? What do you feel like, that's what this movement is about? Or, because I hear that a lot, that we thugs and we're out there just, this is what this movement is. We just out here just to get free stuff. I ain't got shit yet. I've been
I didn't
waiting.
get nothing either. I was about to say, 'cause
I've been waiting
I
on
ain't
a cell
getting
phone, a
nothing.
shirt at least. Shit.
Nothing.
Been able to
I
catch
ain't
the
getting
ATM fall. Nothing. I'm still around here, bro. Damn.
This okay. Oh my gosh. You must have picked me because you've been reading all my stuff on our local Facebook page. Oh my God. I've tried to start telling, and I start with my relatives because those are the folks that I've got to, that I have the most emotional attachment to keeping, that it's to say that the whole movement is about the looters is like saying that all Republicans are part of the Proud Boys or the white supremacist groups, or I'm not going to say neo-Nazis because they're just freaking Nazis. They, it's like, no, you're not part of that movement. So how can you sit there and say that everybody's looting? Everybody who's out there. And I ran into this problem when I did, right after Trump was elected, we did the Women's March down in Denver. And I lost friends because I took my kids to that march. And I found out later it's because Fox News had reported that it was widespread looting. And I'm like, and they're like, how could you take your kids to that? I'm like, there was nothing. It was a bunch of white women walking around Denver. It was really zero looting. But somehow, I don't know where they got the footage from. They decided it was a big, craziness. So anything time the right hears a protest march, it immediately is looting. And it's, again, if it bleeds, it leads, is how the media runs their life, because that's how they get advertising dollars. They're in the news, they get money from advertisers. Sorry. So if it's on fire, if there's somebody laying in the street dying, that's exciting stuff for the media. So I keep, I said, this is my reoccurring conversation on a daily basis, is like, not any more so than every white person is a Ku Klux Klan member. Were there people looting during those? Yeah, but they didn't have anything to do with the movement. They were the people for the movement were there during daylight hours. What happened after 10 o'clock? You can't hold everybody responsible for that. That was a certain group of people.
Because when I had a little march here, you all, in Wellington, and I got a lot of messages.
What?
Wellington? No. And the message was coming off like, don't tear our city up. First off, it's just a peaceful protest. You have nothing in this city but 3 gas stations, 1 McDonald's, 1 Taco Bell, a Family Dollar, and that's it. You ain't got nothing I want to tear up here. What am I gonna burn down? Excuse my language. I said I was gonna be clean today.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that what she says is correct. As soon as you hear protest or march, the first thing they think is, we about to tear your place up. And I had to tell them several times, that's not what we come here to do. That's not what I come here to do. Now, if you want to get to acting a fool, once I get to marching through, then I'm protecting myself. But that's not what we come here to do. We spread unity and peace. I don't want to burn nothing in my own city because y'all ain't got nothing. Then I got to drive 30 minutes away to get a damn burger. I don't want to drive 30 minutes. I'm lazy. I can ride on my electric scooter to McDonald's and get a burger. Now I got to drive 30 minutes away because I done burnt it down. I don't think like that. Like that's not something I want to do to my own community, y'all. So I totally get, and that's why I asked that question. So many people had that perception that that's what we're around here doing, is burning up stuff, and that's not Black Lives Matter people. That's people that's got an agenda to do these things.
Right.
But whoever doing that, y'all hit me up. I want an iPad. Let me stop playing.
Stop it.
Let me go.
No.
Let me stop playing. Let me ask.
Right. I want to say it's all about the propaganda. It's all about what the media wants people to bits and pieces that they want us to know that's happening. Listen here, I saw a lot of TikTok videos of police officers starting looting.
Yep.
They were not on duty. They were starting the looting. So yeah, it's all about the bits and pieces the propaganda that the media wants us to believe. It's all about that. And it's
Yeah,
gonna stay that way. I think if we could change the media, it could be a little better. But that's never gonna happen, right? That's never gonna happen.
Can I say something?
absolutely.
Um, so originally I went to college for journalism. And we reached the point where we had a class to where, and this was actually in the textbook, where it was pretty much teaching us that, listen, the media outlets are owned by about, and the numbers could be wrong, my memory screwed since babies, but about 7 different families. 7 different families that are powerful, wealthy, and that have political agendas. So if you work for these families, you will not be writing an unbiased story. You will not be reporting. You will actually be working for their agenda. And that's okay as long as you know that. Now, even the textbook, it was like, no, so what does that mean to you? And we had to write a paper on it. I'm like, so they're grooming us. They want us to know right now, like if you get in, you're going to be working for someone's agenda. If you don't want to, get out. And I actually resigned and decided that's not something that I want to, because it was, I was young and green. And I thought, if I'm a journalist, I get to write this story and tell the truth and cover this and break. No, it doesn't work that way. The media is not going to change. It is only influenced by a few people who have way more power than us. And I want to talk about too, like, listen, people who are in poverty, whether they're Black or white, they really have very little say. Period, point blank. And these people who run the media, they're not in poverty. So if one person, Tashonda, if you were to do your march and one person independently in that day might not have even had nothing to do with your march, broke into a place, they could show that over and over again, make it look like it was tied to your march. You cannot control the narrative. And then like Frank said, Black people are emotional. We are passionate. It's one of the reasons I feel so blessed to be Black. Right? Like we have passion, but it can be used against us. And the powers that be know that, and they do that. And that's the sad thing. You might have good intentions, but you do not control your narrative. When you get behind these movements, the media will control that narrative.
Yes.
I agree. Last question for all. What can a person do right now that may have the question like, I do not know where to start or what I can do to help? What would you tell them? Let's start with Tim first. Tim, what would you tell them? If a person
We had a I can't remember her name actually now, but we had a diversity consultant come in and tell us, you know what, just ask people what you can do to help them. Like just show up and say, what can I do to help you? Or what yeah, I guess that's just the easiest thing, is just ask people what they need. Because if you're not doing something that is asked for, you're probably not actually helping. So I think just listening, trying to be empathetic and just asking and getting to know people and just be regular people together.
Cass, what can a person do right now that may have that question? What if they came to you? What would you say? How can they help?
If they were white or identified as white, that's where I feel like a lot of this needs to start right now in this country. Is I would say you got to do some work, because white people do not know how to talk about race. And when I say they do not know, I am dead serious. They don't have the vocabulary, because we stopped talking about it when we were 5 and got smacked down by our moms for mentioning a Black friend. Like, oh, we are colorblind. And that was the last conversation we had about race. So when I had talked to my white friends, I asked them, how does your family of origin talk about race? Or did they even talk about race at all? And we start the conversation right there and start building the vocabulary so they don't have a panic attack every time race comes up. Because that's what happens right now. And that's what happens with the Black Lives Matter movement, is like, oh, you brought race into it. And white people everywhere freaking lost their minds. And they may have been right in the middle ground, but they don't have the vocabulary. So we can get that. Like, I think about roughly about the 80% of the white people who can't speak about race without having an anxiety attack. We've got to start talking to them. And as a teacher, I take that part of the revolution on my side, is that I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's start from the very beginning and let's talk about it.
Tim, let's come to you. What can a person do?
Okay, well, first I would say treat people like you want to be treated. Bottom line, you know you don't want to be talked about or degraded at any time. You shouldn't do anyone the same way. Do not assume. Stop making assumptions about people. Treat them as you want to be treated. Be kind. Be kind. Let's just start there. Treat people like you want to be treated. Know that your life is valuable, so know that someone else's life is also valuable.
Frank, same question.
Here we go. I don't know how to answer that question because on a higher level, to me, conversations aren't happening among the people with the biggest megaphones. So when those conversations never happen, and you're expecting people at the ground, at the grassroots level, who are listening to the people with megaphones, to be able to have concrete and real conversation that's going to help move it forward. I don't know how you do that. I really don't. She said, Cass mentioned whites need to have a vocabulary. Danielle said that she got abused for sounding white. So when you're talking about vocabulary, what does that even mean? I mean, really, depending on where you are in the country, where you're from, who influenced your life, vocabulary varies so greatly in this. Now, I don't even know what young people are saying when they're talking to me, whatever color they are. You know what I mean? I have no idea what they're saying, the words that they're using, etc. So doing vocabulary, I think we have to get more educated about the republic that we live in. We really do, and the laws that undergird this republic and how they need to be fairly distributed to every human being. I would love for Black Lives Matters, the leaders of that organization, begin telling us what their movement is deeply rooted in. You hear everything from Marxism to other things that are the undergirding of that movement. How can you feel comfortable if they don't? I mean, stop getting so emotional on TV. Start talking about what your movement's about and what outcomes you're looking to change with your movement. I don't ever hear that in those conversations. So until those conversations get to be kind, like Tan says, you can't expect grassroots people to walk away with kindness. So, to be perfectly honest, most of us just avoid the conversations altogether because we don't know what we're stepping into when the conversation begins.
That's true. Danielle, same question for you.
I think we have to start with our own families and our own household, the way we educate our children. And for white people, if they have any Black friends or they have a token Black friend who they trust and they have questions, if you have a token, ask them those questions. I'm that Black friend for some of my white friends. And for Black people, they have to not get emotional, as Frank said, when asked, because I've been asked some questions about George Floyd from some of my white friends. And I'm like, did you even, I had to, in my inner voice, be like, okay, chill out, breathe. And then, right? Each one teach one, because they really don't know. Because as Cass said, they're scared. They don't know if they ask the question, if they're going to be labeled as a racist. It really was never their problem to begin with. And now it's like, well, wait, I want to help. I didn't know it was this bad. But then they've never been educated. So as a Black person, we can teach our white friends. Tim said, okay, well, ask if you can help. Maybe we don't even need their help, but we can educate them. And we need to not be emotional, not snap at them or attack them for actually being curious and wanting to know if there's something that they can do to help us. And then white people don't tell us what to do. That's one thing that'll make me cuss somebody out, because my one white friend was like, you need to be marching. Well, I'm like, you can't say what I need to be doing. You don't tell me how I need to be reacting to racism against my race. Like, you don't do that. You don't have that right. So just ask questions, white people. Don't tell us what to do. Learn first.
And when I say ask for help too, I kind of just mean like, help me understand too, you know, like just tell me about your perspective personally as an individual.
Absolutely. Jim, we're gonna come to you. Same question.
I agree with Danielle on what she was saying. Basically, it's I ask questions. Knowledge is power. If they don't know, they don't understand. And I see it from both sides. So that's basically just ask questions. I mean, it's not that I know a lot of people would be happy to ask questions to give them the knowledge of what they need to know, what's going on, because at the end of the day, everybody is human. Everybody needs to be treated the same.
Point blank. Point blank. I mean, I have so many people in my inbox asking me the same thing. What can I do to help? And first thing I say is have that conversation if you have kids with your kids now, because there should be no reason why your 5, 6, 7-year-old out here know the N-word. Wellington. I'm calling Wellington now because I live in Wellington. So there's no reason why your 5, 6, 7-year-old should know the N-word, because that's taught. That's taught behavior, very taught behavior. And, you know, to have to live in a place like that where this is a constant battle up here for me, you guys, you know, I'm dealing with this on a daily basis. So, you know, that's why I wanted to have this topic, because it's very important. I've been on a hush, but I feel like my platform is something that I need to use my voice for, you know, and I'm going to use it today. You got something to say, Frank? Because I see you muted. You unmuted yourself, so.
I'm not trying to be the guy that pushes back on everything, but if your white neighbor doesn't know the N-word, how do they know how to respond to it? And see, these are the lines that are continually drawn between trying to educate people. What if my white friend thinks that, you know, it's cool that I got a Confederate flag on the back of my truck riding down Main Street with, with 4 guns in, and I see your head shaking, Cass, but why can't that be good to them? See how we make a judgment immediately about a person? What if I got a chance to engage that person and tell them, you know what, this is what it means to me, and this is why it stirs.
Cass is already, we're going through that with someone here in the Confederate flag. And he said this is what it means to him, that it's heritage. But we know this person is a hateful person. We know this person has absolutely nothing to do with his heritage. But if he want to call it that, then he can call it that.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough, Shonda. But then what we do is generalize at that point. Right. And every other person becomes that. Because people are stinking lazy. I'm gonna just be perfectly honest. You know what? Relationships are hard. It's hard to get to know people. And we're lazier than crap. So we'd rather just generalize, put people in these boxes, and then assume from those boxes and just move on with our lives, right? Especially if it's not having a personal effect on us. And we always talk about these things that we're going to do to help interpersonally with one another. We're too lazy to get outside of our assumptions and find out something new. So the redneck dude that you're talking about, I'll grant you that. You know what I mean? I'm not a redneck fan. You know, I don't listen to country music and drive trucks or anything like that. You know, but I do have a few token redneck friends. You know, because I want to expand my horizons of humans and stuff. So, you know, I love humans.
Oh my God.
I ain't mad, Frank. I ain't mad at you.
I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. Join us Wednesday, October the 28th at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we will discuss do size really matters? You can listen on right. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, our iHeartRadio, Google, Alexia, and many, many more. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram at Blue Cup Chronicles, and that's Blue BLEW. Always email us at bluecupchronicles@yahoo.com, where you can send us ideas and topics. You can remain anonymous or first name only. Until then, I hope we blew your mind, and see you all again. Bye.